The first half of the 2024 MLB season is officially in the books, and we've seen guys like Aaron Judge, Ellie De La Cruz, and Paul Skeens break records, whereas some other guys, the only thing that they're breaking is hearts. So we're going to go through every single team in Major League Baseball and figure out their most disappointing player from the first half, and some of these teams have multiple options, so stay tuned for those. So we're going to start off with the Arizona Diamondbacks because they're one of the teams in this video that has multiple players who could be crowned and deemed as the most disappointing player. Is it Corbin Carroll or Jordan Montgomery? Now, on paper, it sounds like an easy choice because Jordan signed a one-year $25 million contract after winning a World Series against the Diamondbacks, and he's turned in a negative 1.3 WAR and a near 6.5 ERA. But maybe it's not his fault. Maybe you can point the blame to Scott Boras, and that's why you might choose Corbin Carroll, who had a full offseason, and now he's hitting .212 with an 82 OPS plus. Corbin was a top 5 MVP guy last year. He literally won Rookie of the Year. So do we think that Corbin has been more disappointing or Jordan Montgomery? I'm actually going to give it to Jordan Montgomery because the fan base is over him. He's getting booed off the mound, and at least Corbin Carroll has looked better as of late. He actually had a 2-home run, 6 RBI game a couple days ago. Jordan, I mean, he's been batting practice all year. So let me know in the comments, who do you think has been more disappointing, Corbin or Jordan? The Braves were an easy choice for me. Now, some of you might be going with Orlando Arcia, but maybe call me a hater. I don't ever have high expectations for Orlando. He's doing exactly what I thought he was going to do. Michael Harris, what's going on, buddy? This is the same guy that won Rookie of the Year in 2022, and over his first 250 big league games, he hit .295 with a 123 OPS plus. In the first half of 2024, he hit .250 with an 82 OPS plus. He was basically 40% worse. He's suffering from the same sort of bad luck or fate as Corbin Carroll. They're not hitting the ball as hard, so their batting average on balls in play is not nearly what it was the previous few years. So again, maybe you give it to Orlando Arcia or a Matt Olson who's not producing at the elite level that we saw in the past. I'm giving it to Michael Harris. You really thought I was going to go with a 20-year-old as the most disappointing player for the Orioles? No, someone has to hold Cedric Mullins accountable. Sure, he's got some home runs and some stolen bases, and the defense, it's been meh, but you can't have that net defense when you're hitting .214. That's never going to cut it. He has an 81 OPS plus, and to put things into perspective about how bad Cedric has been this year, I didn't realize he had a .256 on-base percentage. That is much lower than I ever thought possible. That is lower than Joey Gallo, who's only hitting 160. So he's not taking walks, he's not hitting the ball hard, he's stealing a few bags, which is cool, but we think that Cedric Mullins is an elite baseball player. He hasn't been that this year. Brian Bayo got $55 million over the next seasons from the Boston Red Sox because he has a good changeup. That is literally the only reason why he got money, and right now, he's a straight thief. If you dig deep into his stats, when he's not throwing the changeup, opposing hitters are nearly hitting .370 against his sinker, a pitch in which he throws over 40% of the time. Maybe he's got a good third pitch, the slider. No, they're hitting .291 against that pitch, so if he's not throwing the changeup, he's getting absolutely demolished. He's almost allowing 10 hits per 9 innings, which is horrific, and that's why he has a 5.3 ERA in 17 starts. He's stealing money right now. You know who else is stealing money? Dansby Swanson. This guy got $177 million, and his batting average, woof. You guys remember how Kevin McAllister looked at Buzz's girlfriend and said woof and was shocked by it? That's what happened to me when I looked at Dansby Swanson's on-base percentage. A .282 on-base percentage and a 76 OPS plus, but you're making $26 million. Just an absolute slap in the face, and again, thievery. He's stealing money. Now, Dansby is always going to play wizard defense. He has 9 outs above average, but in the batter's box, hitting .212 with that 70-something OPS plus and the strikeouts are up, you can't be making almost 30 big ones to do that. I mean, Jorge Mateo can do that kind of defense, but not for $30 million. So that's how bad Dansby's been. I'm bringing up Jorge Mateo. I'm not going to lie to you guys. Seeing this player's face actually kind of makes me upset. Seeing Andrew Benintendi and just knowing I can't call him Benny Biceps anymore because how awful he is in 2024. I mean, the dude on Baseball Reference has a negative 1.8 WAR. I cannot believe that's a real stat. He's been worth negative 1.8 WAR because he's hitting .201, and the defense has completely eroded as well, which sucks because they just gave him 5 years, $75 million. Benny Biceps is no more. Andrew Benintendi, it's a sad story, and get him out of my face. For the Cincinnati Reds, it was a toss-up, and I almost made the Reds one of those teams where I wanted you guys to decide between Frankie Montas and Alexis Diaz, but I'm going to give it to Frankie Montas as the most disappointing player for the Reds. Now, maybe that's not fair because he hasn't really pitched since 2021. He had a shoulder injury in 2022 after getting traded. 2023, he pitched 4 outs, that was it. But they gave him $16 million. That's a lot of money to be a second ace behind Hunter Green or Nick Lodolo, Andrew Abbott, and he has a 4.4 ERA over 17 starts, and it's actually been worse than that. Now, maybe it's not fair because I'm taking out some of his better starts, but since his second start of the season, over the next 15 starts, Frankie has a 5 ERA and a 5 FIP. Opposing hitters are getting on 33% of the time. That's why he has a 5 ERA, because everyone's on base all the time. Now, maybe the Reds are one of those teams where I should have given you guys multiple choices, but for me, the answer is easy. Despite Alexis Diaz not being that great, he has been better as of late. The Guardians could have been one of those teams that had multiple choices, whether you want to give it to Logan T. Allen or Tristan McKenzie. I'm not going to give it to Tristan. He has been bad. Do not get me wrong. A +5 ERA, but he's pitching with a partially torn elbow. That's a thing. He's fighting for his squad. He knows how thin that rotation is. He's pitching when he should be getting Tommy John right now. So for me, I'm going to give it to a healthy Logan Allen, who's been even worse. Logan Allen was pretty good last year in his rookie season. He had a 3.8 ERA. Now, the FIP wasn't that great at 4.19, but I believe that he was going to get even better because in the minor leagues, he was a strikeout machine. In the major leagues, the strikeouts have completely disappeared, and that's why he has a 5.7 ERA and a 5.44 FIP. Those are impossibly bad numbers. It's hard to believe that he kept his job for so long, but yep, he's in AAA right now. Same with Tristan McKenzie. But because Logan does not have a partially torn elbow, I can't really give him some grace. Logan Allen has been the most disappointing player on the Guardians. We're not going to spend too much time on the Rockies because we all know the downfall of Chris Bryant is one of the saddest in baseball history. He was given 7 years, $182 million in 2023. He only played in 80 games while hitting .233, and it got even worse this year in 24 games, so I know it's not a huge sample size, but because he's not playing, and when he is playing, he's been really bad. A 186 batting average and a 63 WRC+. He has a whopping 75 OPS plus since the beginning of 2023. The fall of Chris Bryant, Javier Baez, Anthony Rizzo needs to be studied in a lab. Maybe that's not fair to Anthony Rizzo because he was actually playing pretty well before he suffered that concussion against Fernando Tatis, so maybe that's a little bit mean, but Javier Baez and Bryant for sure deserve to be criticized. The second half of 2023 was the half that we all thought Spencer Torkelson had arrived. He popped off for like 28 doubles, 29 home runs over his final 128 games, and going into 2024, we had high expectations because he was a former first overall pick. Yeah, well, just like Tristan McKenzie and Logan Allen, he's been sent to AAA because he's been that bad. He had a negative 1-point-something WAR again. He struck out a lot. He had a, .212 batting average or something awful. I don't even remember the stats. I'm going off the top of my head, but he's been that bad to where I can kind of remember how bad he's been. Oh, I wasn't that far off. I'm looking at the stats now. He had 4 home runs and 209 at-bats with a 201 batting average and a 67 OPS plus. He was worse than I thought. Javier Baez does have a 29 OPS plus, though, so I'm just throwing that out there. He's hitting 179 with a 29 OPS plus. Maybe it should be Javi, but he's been awful for a while. The Houston Astros are the first team in the video with 3 separate options: Jose Abreu, Josh Hader, and Chas McCormick. Now, Josh Hader has been better as of late, just like Alexis Diaz. An awful start to the season will always make a closer look bad because when you give up 3 or 4 runs a couple different times, your ERA, it's going to take a while to come down. Whereas Chas McCormick, the dude, he went off last year in 2023, and he's been terrible. In 115 games last year, these numbers are jaw-dropping. He did this. Chaz had 22 home runs, 19 stolen bases, and a 131 OPS plus. Fast forward to the first half of 2024, he has 3 home runs in 56 games and a 62 OPS plus. That's why he's not playing as much as Jake Myers. Jake Myers has kind of taken his spot back. So we talked about how Josh Hader has been disappointing, but a little bit better. Chaz has fallen off a cliff. Jose Abreu isn't even on the Astros anymore because he hit 124 with a 3. Not a 300 or a 30, a 3. 1 single digit OPS plus. Let me repeat that. A 3 OPS plus. So I'm going to give it to Jose Abreu because it's not like he played for free. He was given a 3-year, almost $60 million contract. What a waste. I'm going to give it to Jose Abreu, although Chaz, he's right there too. MJ Melendez is lucky that he got up to a crazy start to the season because in his first 9 games, he had 3 home runs and a .325 batting average. Since that point, Yikes. I'm not saying he's in danger of losing his job or anything like that. The home runs have been there. He has 8 home runs over his last 70 starts. But over those same 70 starts, MJ Melendez is hitting 175 with a 240 on base. That is by far some of the worst production that I've seen since the first week of April. 175 and you keep your job? Well, he has kept his job because MJ has some of the highest ceilings of any outfielder. It's just he can't make contact. So at that point, if you can't make contact, what's the point of having a high ceiling? Like, the talent is there, but it's a complete waste, almost like Bradley Zimmer. For the second time in his career, Reed Detmers has been sent down to AAA to try and fix and salvage his career because in 12 starts to begin 2024, there's not really much else to say about the Angels and Reed Detmers. He had a 6.14 ERA in 12 starts. I have no idea what happened because to begin the season, he was on pace to probably start the All-Star game. In his first 4 starts, he had 30 strikeouts and a 1.1 ERA. So how did he end up with a near 6.5 ERA? Well, over his final 8 starts, a 8.9 ERA and a 5.96 FIP. Some of the worst numbers I've ever seen from a starting pitcher. The opposing hitters hit above 300 over that stretch. The Los Angeles Dodgers have the most options for any team in this video. You could go with James Outman. You could go with Bobby Miller. You could go with Walker Buehler. You could go with Chris Taylor. You could go with Enrique Hernandez. You could go with Gavin Lux. I mean, this is the one team that I'm just going to show a bunch of players, and you guys have to let me know in the comments who has been the most disappointing player for the Dodgers. I almost want to give it to Bobby Miller or maybe Walker Buehler because they've both been equally as bad. They have ERAs above 5 or 6, something crazy like that. James Outman, he was in the running to win Rookie of the Year last year, and he's fallen off a cliff. The Dodgers have been completely hammered by injuries, and lucky for them, Andy Pages and other guys have stepped up, and Ohtani's been an absolute unicorn with Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman doing their things. It's tough. I don't know who the most disappointing player has been because there's so many of them. I'd probably give it to Bobby Miller. Nah, that's not fair. Walker Buehler, Gavin Lux, James Outman. Who's the number 1 most disappointing player? I'm going to leave it up to you guys. The Miami Marlins, I'm going to give them 3 different options. We have Tim Anderson, Jake Burger, and Sixto Sanchez. Maybe Sixto Sanchez isn't fair. Maybe Tim Anderson isn't fair either because he's been stinking it up since the second half of last year when Jose Ramirez did his thing. When Jake Burger was traded to the Marlins, obviously it was the second half of last year. His final 53 games, he had 9 home runs, a .303 batting average, and a 127 OPS plus. Fast forward to the first half of 2024, it's now over. He does have 10 home runs, which is nice, and 35 RBIs is decent, but Jake Burger is hitting .225 with a 265 on base and a 74 OPS plus. Praying that he bounces back and maybe gets traded and that's what he needs. Maybe you give it to Tim Anderson. Then again, Sixto Sanchez was literally called out by his manager for not really showing a lot of effort to begin games, and that's why he was, a 6 ERA, and then he was relegated to the bullpen. Who is it for the Marlins? This next pick is not going to make any sense unless you're a diehard baseball fan like me and you've been watching every single Freddie Peralta start because since the second week of the season, he's been roughed up. Now, don't get me wrong. Freddie Peralta has still been nasty. He has 97 strikeouts over his last 15 starts. That's over 79 innings, so that's very impressive. But over those same 15 starts, Freddie has a 4.8 ERA. That's not Freddie Peralta-like, even though the strikeouts have been there. The thing that makes Freddie Peralta special is the fact that, yes, he strikes out a lot of guys, but also he's very good at limiting the hits per 9. Now, opposing hitters, they're only hitting 243, but that's not usual of Freddie Peralta. Usually they're batting 190-ish. So lucky for Freddie Peralta, Colin Ray and Tobias Myers have really masked his struggles because they've kept that team afloat. Freddie Peralta has been good in stretches this year, but for me, considering how bad he's been over the last 15 starts, he's my most disappointing player for the Brewers. He should be their best pitcher. Now, this has been awesome for me, a Guardians fan, but I do like Pablo Lopez, so I don't like seeing his regression. A 5.1 ERA in 19 starts. He basically has the same strikeouts per 9. The walks are actually down. His biggest bugaboo, according to what I'm seeing, is the fact that he's giving up a few more home runs and a few more base hits. But apparently, he's not stranding runners as well as he did in the past either. Stranding a runner means that you got yourself in a jam. There's runners at second and third, and you strike out a few guys, no damage done. His strand rate is not great this year. Yeah, if you take a look at his situational pitching, opposing teams are nearly hitting 300 with runners in scoring position and in high leverage situations. The other team is batting 342, so he's been completely useless when his team needs him to bail them out. If you ever want to build a case as to why baseball is so confusing and doesn't make any sense, just point to Jeff McNeil of the New York Mets, because back in 2022, Jeff hit 326. He won a batting title. Fast forward to 2024, the shift has been banned. We all thought that Jeff was about to be hitting 350, 360 without the shift. Well, he goes into the second half of 2024 with a 216 batting average and a 71 OPS plus. And again, it makes absolutely no sense why he's not been able to adjust to the shift getting banned. Maybe he was so good at going the other way when everyone was lined up towards the right side of the infield. Maybe that was his secret sauce. Who knows? But Jeff McNeil hitting 216 was 100% not on my baseball bingo card for the first half of this season. I know the home run derby was in Arlington, Texas this year, was in the Rangers Stadium, but if you told me that Carlos Rodon was a batting practice pitcher for the home run derby, I might believe you. Over Carlos's final 14 starts to end the season, so once April turned into May, he was a completely different pitcher because he began the season on fire. He had a 2.4 ERA heading into May. Over those 14 starts, he's given up 17 home runs, and he has a near 5.6 ERA. He's striking out, guys, 82 strikeouts in 74 innings, so occasionally he'll rip it 98, 99 miles an hour and go 5-6 innings, but that's only because he was trying to save the bullpen. He had already given up 6 or 7 runs prior to that. Can't forget that Carlos was given a mega contract, 6 years, $162 million, and as a Yankee, over 34 starts, he has a 5.5 ERA and a 5 FIP. Yikes. Now, the only reason why I'm going with Zach Geloff as the most disappointing player for the A's is simply because I think the world of this kid. I feel like he's going to be one of the better second basemen in baseball for the next decade. Him having 12 home runs and 11 stolen bases on paper sounds great, but he's got a 268 on base. He's got to take more walks. Last year, he had 26 walks in fewer games, where this year, he has 22 walks in 76 games. You got to take more pitches, my guy. He's playing better defense this year, which is nice, and the sprint speed is still top 14% fast, but he's basically been Joey Gallo bad in regards to striking out. He's bottom 1% at striking out and bottom 2% in whiff rate. A whiff is a swing and miss on a baseball inside the zone, so he's swinging at strikes and just missing them. He had a fantastic series to end the first half against the Phillies. He's a Philly native, so maybe he had some extra energy and that boosted up his stats, but before that, it was rough. On the season, in the first half, he's hitting 204 with a 268 on base and a 648 OPS. I wonder what that would have looked like had he not gone off. Staying with the Phillies, we just talked about, this is an easy pick for me because not only has Taijuan Walker been bad, because they gave him a lot of money, 4 years, $72 million, they felt obligated to put him back in the rotation when he was healthy. So not only has Taijuan been useless, a negative 0.3 WAR and a near 5.7 ERA over 10 starts. So again, maybe I'm being too harsh because it's 10 starts, but those 10 starts came at the expense of Spencer Turnbull, who was on fire to begin the season. They ruined his momentum. They put him back in the bullpen. Talking about Turnbull, he came back to the bullpen once Walker went back on the IL, and now Turnbull's on the IL because they mess with him. So Taijuan Walker has been a lose-lose, however you want to slice it. Ke'Bryan Hayes is sort of turning into the Los Angeles Angels for me in terms of predictions because I believe in the Angels. I think that they're going to go on a playoff run and finally fulfill their destiny of being one of the better teams in baseball with all the talent. Kind of the same thing for Ke'Bryan Hayes, who yet again is struggling inside the batter's box. He's hitting 244 with a sub 300 on base and a 74 OPS plus. The defense is still there. Obviously, he's a vacuum over there. It's always going to be platinum. But come on, man. You're better than a 70-something OPS plus. You're embarrassing me. All right, here we go. We have another team with multiple options. The San Diego Padres. You can either go with Xander Bogaerts or you can go with Joe Musgrove. Xander was given $280 million to play a premium position in shortstop. He's not even a shortstop, and he's not even a high contact guy anymore because we know Xander Bogaerts, despite the defense, he was going to be a extra base machine and drive in 100 plus runs. He did that in consecutive seasons in 2018 and 2019 with the Red Sox. Even last year in 2023 in the second half, he was one of the best hitters in baseball, so he was struggling. He somehow ended up with a 117 OPS plus and a 285 batting average. Going from that to a 69 OPS plus, do we think that that deserves deserves the crown more than Joe Musgrove. So both guys have been injured throughout the year, so they don't have a huge sample size. But Joe, he had a 5.66 ERA over 10 starts. And again, he was given a sizable contract as well. 5 years, $100 million. I mean, he's a hometown kid. So at this point, I'll probably give it to Xander Bogaerts, considering how girthy, that's a weird word to say, but how big his contract is. And Joe Musgrove only had a handful of innings. Xander had a handful of at-bats. Who would you pick? I'm still going Xander Bogaerts. Now, just like Corbin Carroll, Blake Snell has looked better as of late over his final 2 starts to end the first half. He literally gave up 2 base hits and 0 runs over 12 innings, so he was essentially perfect. So when you end the season with 12 consecutive scoreless innings, yet you still have a 6.3 ERA. I know it's a small sample size, only 8 starts, but just like Jordan Montgomery, maybe you can point the finger at Scott Boras for taking his sweet time and only getting a 1-year contract. Well, Snell does have a player option, which he's absolutely going to take, considering it's like a $32 million player option. But Blake had a 10+ ERA his first 6 starts. I'm looking at his stats. You know what's crazy? He's won 2 Cy Youngs, but only been a 1-time All-Star. How does that make sense? Anyways, I'm getting distracted. I kind of expected this from Blake Snell because if we travel back to 2018 when he had a 1.8 ERA and won the Cy Young, the next year he had a 4.2 ERA. Then after that, he had a 3.2, after that a 4.2, after that a 3.8, then a 2.25, and back to a 6. So he's good one year, not great the next. Great one year, not good at all the next. So he's following the trend. I feel like we all should have expected this. Man, we all look stupid thinking that Jorge Polanco was going to fix the black hole that is the second base spot for the Seattle Mariners. He got traded from Minnesota to Seattle. Okay, he's a switch hitting guy who's been pretty good throughout his career, a doubles guy. He's got some home run pop as well, can maybe steal a base or 2. Sir, you're batting 197 with 18 RBIs over 61 games, and you have a 67 OPS plus. What are you doing? I genuinely feel like there's a witch or a sorcerer out there, like maybe they're from the Acolyte and they just hate the Mariners and they put a hex at second base. If you're playing second base for the Mariners, you're going to be awful because Jorge had a 111 OPS plus his first 9 seasons in the big leagues. Then he goes from a 111 OPS plus to a 67 and he's completely useless. Only the Mariners. If I told you guys that Paul Goldschmidt was heading into the second half with 13 home runs, 6 stolen bases, you might be thinking, well, he's probably got some decent surface stats, right? Well, he's hitting .230 with a .291 on base percentage. That would be the worst of his career by far. Just to put it into context, the worst on base Paul Goldschmidt has ever had was back in 2019. He had a .346 on base. So to go from a career worst of .346 to a .291, and on top of that, you have an 87 OPS plus. I know the doubles have been there. He's got 13 home runs and a couple stolen bases at the ripe age of, 36 years old? He's almost 37. Is it father time? Is it just regression? Is he not hitting the ball as hard? Ooh, this one's got a sting if you're a Rays fan. Maybe not too much because Kyle Manzardo, who the Guardians got in return for Aaron Civale in the trade deadline of 2023. He kind of stunk it up to begin his career, but Aaron Civale isn't even on the Rays anymore because he's been that bad. If you go back to 2023, when he was first acquired by the Rays, he had a 5.3 ERA in his first 10 starts. Okay, we write it off. Maybe he just couldn't get comfortable. He was homesick because he spent all that time with the Guardians and their system. Well, in 2024 and 17 starts, he had a 5.07 ERA. Now, the strikeouts were decent. I think the strikeouts were up compared to what he did with the Guardians. He went from a 6.8 strikeouts per 9 to a 11.5 when he first joined, and then back down to an 8.7 this year. And now that he's with the Brewers, it's back up to 11.1. So one of the rare times that the Rays did not win a trade, and that hurts. Now, you're going to have to really hear me out for this next pick, because if you're a Rangers fan, maybe you give it to Evan Carter, but I'm going to try and convince you that it's not Evan Carter, who still has some time to progress. He's a young hitter who really overperformed last year, in my opinion, so I think he had way too high of expectations. Adolis Garcia has 17 home runs, 45 RBIs. He was just in the home run derby. Why would he be the most disappointing player for the Rangers? But when you really dig deep into his stats, he's walking less, and also in terms of his batting average on balls in play, it's completely plummeted. Perhaps that's due to bad luck, because I have used batting average on balls in play to, elevate guys like Vladimir Guerrero Jr. saying, oh, they're just getting unlucky. But when you look at the walk rate, which is not as high as it was in 2023, he's only batting .211 with a .277 on base and an 88 WRC plus. There is some pause for cause, as well as Adolis Garcia. He went from a Gold Glove candidate to being pretty bad out there. I don't understand what is going on with Bo Bichette. If we look from 2019 to 2023, Bo Bichette was a lock to hit 300. He basically did. He hit 299 with a 126 OPS plus over his first 530 games. In both 2021 and 2022, Bo Bichette led the league in base hits with 191 and 189 respectively. Again, the league just means the AL. And now, all of a sudden, when his team kind of needs him the most because they got to keep up with the beefed up Orioles, the beefed up Yankees, he has 4 home runs in 78 games while hitting 222 with a awful 277 on base and a 70 OPS plus. Just barely in the 70s, a 7-0. And last but not least, the Washington Nationals. If you guys have not noticed, we did go in alphabetical order. Patrick Corbin, I should like this guy because we share the same birthday. It's in a couple days, July 19th. Yeah, I'm not going to be nice to this guy because I know that he was great in the 3 innings of shutout relief in Game 7 of the World Series, but people forget that he had an almost 6 ERA that postseason. Oh, they wouldn't have a ring without him. Yes, they would. Patrick Corbin has a 5.5 ERA in 2024. He's worst in hits. He's worst in runs allowed. He also has a awful 6.3 strikeouts per nine, where he used to be known as the strikeout guy, like a high strikeout 11.1, 10.6 strikeouts per nine in 2018, 2019. Perhaps he was a sticky merchant. I had no idea, but oof. 35 point something million dollars for a 5.5 ERA. Luckily for Washington Nationals fans, that contract is coming to a close this year, but it was a back-ended contract. That's why he's making almost 40 big ones for a 5.5 ERA yet again. He's 1-9. He's awful. And there you have it, the most disappointing players in baseball to begin the 2024 MLB season. If you guys want to see a part 2 where we talk about the most surprising players, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys there. Thanks for watching.